Cooper got open and caught it. Touchdown, Indiana.
Going up the middle is Omar Cooper, and he'll walk into the end zone.
Whoa, pump fake. Complete at the 47. Surratt with no one to beat.
Hello and welcome to Crimson Kickoff, live from the Sweet Deck here at Merchants Bank Field at Memorial Stadium. Got the band practicing before Indiana football takes on Michigan State in their homecoming game. But we got a great show for you coming your way. I'm Joe Cronin, Graham Nash, Thomas Carr, whole production crew. Wall-to-wall talk about IU football. The Hoosiers are coming off their best win in program history, their first ever win against a top 5 opponent on the road when they went to Eugene and took down the Oregon Ducks 30-20. This team is legit one of the best in the country. But before we dive into everything, there was news that broke today, just about 4 hours ago. Head coach for IU, Curt Cignetti, signed a massive 8-year extension through 2033, naming him the 3rd highest paid coach in all of college football. Thomas, this is huge news for IU football.
Yeah, the main thing for me is it eliminates any other noise outside of the program, right? James Franklin gets fired on Sunday. There's talks about the Penn State job, right? Cignetti's the hottest coach in the country. Well, what this does is it solidifies that he is here to stay. I think putting pen to paper is a huge statement to his players saying, hey, we got more football to play here.
I totally agree. And I mean, if you look at the guys that he's immediately behind, Kirby Smart and then Ryan Day, I mean, those are 2 top-tier coaches. Those are CFP-winning coaches. And you put Curt Cignetti right up there with the best of them. It's a big statement that there's a lot of belief in this guy. And after the win in Eugene, pretty good reason.
It's a statement about belief, but also the aggressiveness, Thomas, that Scott Dolson put together to jump the gun. I mean, it took 4 days between Franklin's firing and Curt Cignetti signing this very large extension. And honestly, I feel like it's pretty well-deserved. 17 wins in just a year and a half.
Yeah, right. Scott Dolson had the urgency last year after the Michigan game signing that extension, and then Coach Cignetti said it himself. Indiana is the emerging superpower in college sports. Why would I leave? Today is even more of a reason why he's not going to leave.
Well, Curt Cignetti, after putting pen to paper, putting down his John Hancock, or I guess his Curt Cignetti, his own name, he had some glamorous things to say about this extension and staying in Bloomington.
My wife, Manette, and I love Indiana University, Bloomington, the state of Indiana, the people we've met. We have very strong feelings about President Whitten and Scott Dolson. And, you know, we've accomplished a lot here in a short amount of time, but still have a lot of work to do. So I couldn't be more proud to be a Hoosier, and I plan on retiring as a Hoosier. And the way that this state has embraced us and our success in football has meant more to me than anything else. So I just wanted to get on camera and let you know that Curt Cignetti is going to work daily to make Indiana the best they can be.
Well, the doubters around the country that thought he was leaving, I guess they were proven wrong. But let's dive into this last week, Graham. Indiana, you know, that's the biggest win of their season. Going on the road against the number 3 team in the country, the Oregon Ducks, and getting their first ever win against a top 5 opponent on the road. I mean, that was massive.
It was. As the band plays, we can talk about it and we can show you the highlights from this absolutely incredible game. It was truly one for the history books. At Autzen Stadium in Eugene, Oregon, this place was packed. Yellow and green lined the bleachers, a little bit of red supporting Fernando Mendoza and this entire squad. The defense had a bit of a tough start, though. Dante Moore airs it out downfield to Malik Benson, a 44-yard touchdown pass. Oregon gets the first 6 up on the board, and Thomas, they take a quick lead.
Yeah, shades of Illinois there, busted coverage. Fernando Mendoza up through the pocket here, decides not to slide, gets through some tackles, gets down to the 3-yard line. I can't believe I'm saying this. First rushing touchdown of the season for Roman Hemby, celebrating with his teammates. Look at the power getting through the end zone there. Hoosiers lead 10-7 into the first. Now, here we go. 58 yards from Brandon Frankie. Are you kidding me? Hoosiers lead 13-10 at the half.
I don't think I've ever seen you that excited.
I love kickers.
Well, Indiana loves this as well. The Roman Empire. Roman Hemby getting back into the end zone, his second score of the ball game and of the season. He was rolling, but Thomas, this is where it all started to crumble.
Yeah, Bear Alexander gets in on the front, and just unbelievable undercut there from Brandon Finney. Ends up scoring, making it 20-20. You're going to see Coach Dan Lanning holding everybody back there. Hoosiers couldn't hold the Ducks out of the end zone, and that play almost changed the game. This play set up a score for the Hoosiers. Great blocking downfield. Surratt gets all the way down outside the 5-yard line, but no worries, Graham. He's going to get the ball again.
He continues to impress. After a big week in Iowa, he has a big week in Oregon. End zone, touchdown, Waffle House. Indiana takes a 27-20 lead, and a pick is all that the Hoosiers need left to ice this game. Indiana gets its first ever win on the road against a top 5 opponent and moves to number 3 in the country.
Indiana again outgaining their opponent, and this was a high-powered, high-moving, and fast flying around Oregon offense that they really shut down. We'll touch heavy on what the defense was able to do to this talented Oregon squad. But Graham, around the country really, this Hoosiers team was doubted going into this game. You saw many pregame shows, ours included, that the majority of people picked against Indiana and picked Oregon to win. I did say majority. Thomas, if you want to shout yourself out, you're welcome to.
No, continue.
Thomas was the lone one last week to pick Oregon beating Indiana. But, Graham, it just goes to show that this team was able to face the adversity, block out all the outside noise, and come away with just a huge win.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Like you said, we're going to get into it, but that defense traveled. It was unbelievable what they were able to do. And even the offense, standing the pressure of Autzen Stadium, which is known for being an intimidating road environment, one of the hardest to play in Oregon, had an unbelievable win streak going in that stadium, and still Indiana finds a way to go in there and win.
Now, a firm believer from the media perspective that wasn't named Thomas Crow was on the set of College Game Day. A former Colts player, the biggest personality on the show, Pat McAfee, had an awesome moment out in Eugene, and, you know, it made me want to shout.
Now, you would think that would scare this year's Signetti's team. You think that because Autzen's so damn hard to win in, and they don't smoke cigs around here, they smoke trees around here, Fernando Mendoza has no chance to come in here. I love Oregon. I love Dan Lanning. I was shirtless with that man this morning. But my wife is a Hoosier through and through, and so am I, baby. Give me the Hoosiers, Hoosiers. And the biggest win of Signetti's career, the Indiana Hoosiers tell the world, we're for real. I'll see you both in the college football playoffs. Indiana gets a win today. Changes the trajectory of all of college sport.
Me and my good friend Pat McAfee, we were both on the same page. Thought the Hoosiers had a chance to win this one, and they did, boys.
You and Pat can break bread over that at some point. But with the win, Indiana moved up to their highest ranking ever. They're number 3 in the entire nation. And, Thomas, this is huge. They're getting the recognition nationally. I know the AP poll doesn't entirely matter come the college football playoff rankings, but they're getting the attention, and now they really do have a target in their back for the back half of the season.
Joe, first time the Hoosiers have ever received first-place votes in the AP poll. There were 3 people in the country this week that believe the Hoosiers were the number 1 team in the country, and their votes showed it. They end up at 3.
Now, Graham, I know this team is so internally based, and they don't take the rat poison, as they say. Is there added pressure when you get that number 3, when you get that top 5 ranking?
I mean, I think so. They're staring down the barrel, especially with how the rest of the Big Ten shaped out this last weekend. They're staring a 12-0 season right down the gun. So obviously a lot of pressure, especially with what they were able to do. Bloomington has expectations. Kurt Signetti signs a big contract. I think there are absolutely expectations to get this done, make a conference championship appearance at Lucas Oil in Indianapolis.
Well, it seems like Bloomington is a football town. IU is a football school as of right now with the Signetti extension, the way this football team is playing. We were going to go into a full X's and O's dive on the Indiana win over Oregon, but before that, I was able to catch up with cornerback, coming back from injury, D'Angelo Pons. Don't go anywhere.
All right, I'm here with D'Angelo Pons. D'Angelo, you're coming off that win at Oregon. When the clock hit 0, I mean, what was the emotions on the team with a win like that?
Just pure excitement. It was a great feeling. We took it all in that day, and after that, we celebrated, and we're on to the next, so yeah.
You mentioned after the Illinois game you feel this team is a top 10 team. I mean, what all did you show in that Oregon game?
I feel like we showed exactly what I said, that we can compete with the best, and we're one of the best. We're one of the powerhouses in this conference, so yeah.
6 games down, you have a bye week down. What's been your favorite part of the process? I know everything kind of moves so fast.
Just having fun going out there with the guys, knowing the work we put in. I feel like we make the game fun, and just making plays, I feel like that's fun, so yeah.
Coming home, 6 games down, homecoming. I mean, how nice is it having, the fans on your side defensively?
It's definitely fun. Not hearing boos when we go out there. I feel like just having a hometown on our back, I feel like it's going to be fun. So, yeah.
Coach Signetti talked on Monday, mentioned how everything's in the rearview mirror. Doesn't matter about what happened before. How do you personally, kind of move on to the next when there's so much outside noise?
I feel like when you play under a coach like that for so long, you adapt to that mindset. So coach really didn't have to say anything. We're on to the next no matter what. Good, bad, or indifferent, we're on to the next week, and we don't dwell on the past, so yeah.
Offensively, what kind of challenges does Michigan State pose for you guys?
They have a lot of good weapons on the outside. They like to run the ball and set up with play action. They like to take shots, so our goal is to eliminate that, so yeah.
Now, with a home game, what is your favorite part about being at home?
My favorite part is the fans. After the game, just running to the student section. I feel like that's one of my favorite parts of the home games.
Well, D'Angelo, best of luck.
Thank you.
Well, D'Angelo Pons is a pretty soft-spoken guy off the field, but Graham, when he is in between those white lines, he plays with such a fire, and it was good for the Hoosiers to have him back against Oregon.
Yeah, it really was. He's an absolute beast, and we saw the difference that he makes just going from Iowa to Oregon. Against Iowa, Indiana had to change that defensive scheme a bit, went much more zone than we've seen from them in the early weeks, and then now they get D'Angelo Pons back, and that defense was locked down. Totally opened up that linebacker room to play freely. We're going to get into the numbers a bit more, but man, he's such an impact player.
Absolutely. This 30-20 win over Oregon, it was a game really built off adversity. You can look at any moment throughout any of the 4 quarters that were played. There were moments when Indiana had their back against the wall and fought back. Let's start with Fernando Mendoza, Thomas. It wasn't his best game. He made some mistakes, but golly, when it mattered, he stepped up.
Yo, Joe, it's the adversity for me. He throws the interception against Iowa, comes back, game-winning touchdown against Oregon. Throws a pick 6 where the game is now tied. Everything looks like it might change. You guys said it was as loud as it was in that stadium all day. What's he do? Leads a 75-yard go-ahead touchdown.
Yeah, Thomas, my ears are honestly still ringing, and that's not from the band just blasting in the background of our show right now. But Graham, Mendoza just seems when he makes a mistake is able to shake it off so easily. Throws a pick 6 and then goes on a 12-play, 75-yard drive to take the lead in Autzen.
Yeah, he was 6 for 8 passing in that next drive, barely made any mistakes. It looked like he came fresh out of the locker room, was hyped and ready to go, and I think a lot of that can be thanks to the teammates on the sideline. He talked about that, how no one doubted him, no one doubted that offense after the pick 6. He went back to that sideline, and they were all like, hey, dude, we believe in you. We know you're going to go score. Do your thing. And he did.
Well, he's always had a great energy when he's talked post-game, and obviously he is coming off a win, so he's, probably a little more peachy than it would be off a loss. But everyone that has talked about Mendoza talks so highly. That's just the guy he is. He's very cheerful. I mean, you saw him in the Wall Street Journal talking about his business goals and aspirations. Just kind of shows the person that Mendoza is. And Thomas, this is a guy that he's really has found his favorite target on the outside in Elijah Surratt.
What else can we say about Elijah Surratt? He didn't perform in the big games last year, comes and performs in this game this year. Guys, I mean, he is establishing himself as not just one of the best players in the entire country, but in the entire Big Ten. Or just one of the best players in the country, I'm sorry. I want to look at a stat. Last time of this year, he had 29 catches, 513 yards, 2 touchdowns. This year, 39 catches, 10 more, 533 yards, similar yardage, 5 more touchdowns, 7 touchdowns in the year at this time.
I think you can look beyond the yardage, Thomas, and Graham, he seems as good as he is in talented getting the separation. Also, the security blanket, if things are going south for Mendoza, he's looking for 13.
Yeah, exactly. The only scenario up to this point in the season where Fernando Mendoza isn't strictly looking for Elijah Surratt is on first down. On first down, Mendoza's favorite target is actually Omar Cooper Jr. But if you go through the rest of pressure situations, Elijah Surratt, Elijah Surratt, Elijah Surratt. They call him Waffle House for a reason. That dude is open all the time. And he's become a bigger body, I feel like. He can take that for yards after catch a ways. He can shake some guys off. He can turn and burn. He's just a stud of a player.
There's a durability to him that I don't think we really saw last season. I mean, he's making guys miss. He's shaking tacklers like you just mentioned. And the thing with Surratt is he has gotten better each week when the competition has gotten tougher. He leads the entire Big Ten Conference in yards per game so far after a shaky start against Old Dominion, but that was a shaky start for the whole team. Surratt has looked terrific when it comes against Big Ten competition, and he's doing it at the highest level. He has back-to-back games, Thomas, of game-sealing touchdowns.
Yeah, and what better way to show just what a connection that Fernando Mendoza and Elijah Surratt have? Trust at the end of the game when it matters. When you need a play, Elijah Surratt is the guy who you trust. And, you know, in terms of Big Ten connections, I know about the guys at Ohio State. I know about the guys at USC, that connection. I think this is probably the best in the Big Ten, in my opinion.
And it feels like Elijah Surratt has completely wiped away the doubt that that fans were coming into this season with in terms of him not being able to show up in big games. You think of that play right there, getting that game-winning touchdown, getting a game-winning touchdown in Oregon. We didn't see that last season against Michigan, against Ohio State, against Notre Dame. He just kind of disappeared, fell into the background a little bit. Against Illinois, Iowa, and Oregon, Surratt has totaled 33 catches, 345 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He was also responsible for 7 of Indiana's 23 first downs against Oregon. This dude is a clutch machine this year.
Well, on the go-ahead touchdown when the score was 20-20 in the fourth quarter against Oregon, Surratt caught 3 passes from Mendoza's 5 on that drive, including, obviously, the touchdown. I want to go into that duo a little bit. As far as duos, not just in the Big Ten, but in the country, Thomas, you look at Fernando Mendoza, you look at Elijah Surratt, there aren't many that are better in a cohesion and on-field performance than those two.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we talked about it pre-show, right? USC, Mayava, and Lemon. And then you look at Ohio State, it's Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sand.
It's all Big Ten.
That's both. Yeah, all 3 are Big Ten. But you look at it, which one has the best receiver? You can make the argument maybe Ohio State. Which one has the best quarterback? I don't know how much of a conversation there is, really. I understand Mayava, but I think it's Mendoza. But I think the difference there is I don't think Jeremiah Smith and Elijah Surratt are that far away from each other. And I think just the connection that Fernando and Surratt has built, I think it's one of the strongest, if not the strongest in the country.
Well, as far as things looking for the end of the season, I mean, Fernando Mendoza skyrocketed back up to 3rd in the overall Heisman odds after, you know, stats-wise it wasn't crazy, but it's having that quote-unquote Heisman moment where he drives down the field in a hostile environment and wins the game for his team. And then Elijah Surratt right now is 3rd overall in odds for the Biletnikoff Award behind Jeremiah Smith and Mekhi Lemon. So all those names kind of thrown in the mix right there. I want to move on, though, to the rushing offense for this Indiana team. It was tough. This is a great Oregon front that proved it difficult to run for Indiana. But Roman Hemby, Graham, we talked about it a little bit last week. I mean, he's the running back 1 in this room, and he is so physical. He fights for extra yards, and he's a warrior, according to Kurt Cignetti.
He is. I mean, nickname right now, the Roman Empire. And I think for good reason. This dude just established himself as RB1 for really tough runs. Just like that. After first contact, he still kind of finds a way to just run through a guy. Just like there as well. It was really, really impressive. 19 rushing attempts, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns, only averaged about 3.5 yards per carry, but they seemed to come in the biggest moments. They seemed to come when Indiana really needed a couple yards and just needed to find someone that could get downhill a little bit more than those receivers, maybe when Mendoza was a little unsteady. And man, this was such a big game. He played 82% of Indiana's snaps, was responsible for 95 yards. He was just all over the place.
And this is something, Thomas, this was the first time that we saw one of the running backs in this room get upwards of, he had 19 carries on the game. That was the most of any running back for Indiana all season long. Is this a trend for the future, or was it just the caliber of opponent, you think?
I think it's why you brought him here, right? You want him to be your workhorse. Now, this isn't anything against Kaylon Black. Kaylon Black had his moments in the game. He actually led the team in yards per carry. But what I think matters is Roman Hemby is just playing a different level of football right now. One shout out to the offensive line. You even saw it in those highlights. Not very often he even gets touched before he gets to the line of scrimmage. And then when he does get hit, you hit it. Yards after contact. And a very important thing, he falls forward every time. That's 3 yards pretty much no matter what.
This is a very experienced guy. Had just shy of 500 carries prior to transferring to IU from Maryland. He actually played in Autzen Stadium last season with Maryland. A much different result for the Terrapins as compared to the Hoosiers, but a guy with plethora of experience is shining again at the highest level and probably a higher level right now. I mean, he's never played for a number 3 team in all of the land. I want to touch on the offensive line, though, and Graham, I know you have all the stats. You talked about it a lot on Saturday, the penalties. And it at times looked like drive killers they were able to overcome. Back to that adversity part.
Yeah, the penalties were really, really tough. 6 false starts and a delay of game. The false starts were responsible for 30 yards. That just pushed Indiana back, and it really got to a tough spot where the Hoosiers, they were going on a good drive. You think about that last drive after the pick 6, Indiana was moving great and had 2 false starts to bring them back. Could have totally been drive killers. They've still found ways to get it done, but it was a struggle for some of those O-linemen. Khalil Benson really struggled, allowed 5 QB pressures, committed 2 penalties. Zen Mikulski actually subbed in for a few plays. We didn't see that at the time, Joe. But then you talk about some other guys. Bray Lynch, he kind of got run over as well. Drew Evans, he allowed 3 QB pressures, committed 2 penalties. So there was no one guy. Everyone kind of suffered from the environment and from Oregon.
I want to ask you guys were there, I was watching it on TV. How egregious were the Oregon shifts? Because to me, I understand the simple motion, but to me it kind of looked like they were given a little bit more than I think you're maybe allowed, and that's what the broadcast said as well.
I think, Thomas, you might have had the better. It is a little tough on the field because that's where we were shooting footage. It is kind of hard to see, but it did look they were having big movements that were kind of, as a result, Indiana's having these false starts happen. And I know Gary Danielson did touch on it a little bit in the CBS broadcast.
Yeah, there were at least 3 different times where I saw it, like you said, they hit on it once. I understand, and to clarify, shifting on the defensive line is completely legal. We're not saying that. But the way, the mannerisms in which they were doing with seemed a little egregious and seemed to have maybe caused some of those false starts, which is a violation.
Something I will say is I remember there was one time, it was on that final drive from Indiana after the pick 6, where I was set up with my camera, zoomed in tight on Fernando Mendoza, and all of a sudden, a player that wasn't even in my screen went flying across the entire thing. Like, wasn't even in the screen one side, went to the other, just totally went across the side. And that was when I was kind of like, whoa, okay, that's a big shift. Because like Joe said, it truly was kind of hard to tell how big that shift was on the field. But it was at that moment where I was like, that was noticeable.
But not to take away from the noise of Autzen Stadium either, causing so many of those issues.
The Brandon Finney pick 6, Graham, I mean, that might have been the loudest I have ever heard a crowd. That place is deafening. And what's crazy is their capacity is less than Memorial Stadium.
Yeah. I felt it in my core. I don't know how they do that. Yeah, the design of that place is unbelievable. It just trapped sound. Like we talked about last week, the design, it's meant to trap sound, and it did. And that was like almost frightening because it was like, whoa, like this place is alive now. That was the only time that I felt that.
I mean, it seemed like the Duck Faithful or the Duck Zone, I'm not sure what they call their student section, was on the edge of their seats because they realized, like, oh, this Indiana teams are hanging in there kind of in those moments. All the momentum shifted to Oregon after that pick 6, and I know we've talked about it, but this was facing adversity, and, mentioned it in that Iowa game, but that was a great team finding a win over another great team, Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, like you guys said, the noise, the atmosphere, that changes. And when Indiana, you feel kind of like the hopeful, being up 20-13 and then throwing a pick 6 off your back foot, right? Guys, that feels like the air, it just gets sucked out of you. All of that air goes into the building. It gets live. And, just so impressive from Fernando Mendoza and the offense, the receivers, the running backs, the offensive line, the tight ends coming out, staying calm. I think it was a 12-play drive, 75 yards, going down and scoring the go-ahead. And then everything changed when Dante Moore threw the interception.
Something I will say is it felt like Oregon was scheming to get the crowd involved.
Yeah.
There were a lot of blitzes, which, as we talked about last week, not something Oregon did a lot through the first weeks of the season. Really didn't blitz much at all. But they sent the house at Fernando Mendoza on about half of Mendoza's dropbacks. They were really putting pressure on him. But it's kind of a pick your poison scenario with Fernando Mendoza in terms of blitzing and not blitzing. When Mendoza is not faced with a blitz, he's graded as the best quarterback in the Big Ten, 3rd nationally. When he is faced with a blitz, he has a Big Ten leading 9 touchdowns. So you're picking your poison. And clearly what teams have decided is, okay, I'm going to blitz because I'd rather, face that risk of, okay, maybe we do actually get home to him than not blitzing and allowing a Mike Shanahan play to set up, which is the last thing teams want.
It's fascinating what Mendoza's been able to do, how he has adjusted to things. Because in Iowa, it seemed like the blitz was actually getting to him outside of the Elijah Surratt pretty much game-winning touchdown. But against Oregon, he was much more poised, got the ball out quick. And this was a game we'd mentioned prior to this show, not a lot of weapons were used. It was Elijah Surratt. Omar Cooper got his hands on the ball a lot. And then Roman Hemby and Nowakowski were the last two guys catching passes from Mendoza and Thomas. Is this a trend that might continue once the competition gets tougher? You know, this is a team that very likely 92% chance to make the playoffs right now.
I don't know if that's necessarily a trend I see continuing. I think Kalen Black will stay involved in the run game, and I think E.J. Williams gets more passes, and I think Holden Stays will still be involved in the offense. I don't see it being just a four-person skill player race for this team. We've talked about it for weeks, right, that E.J. Williams is a guy who's going to help him. Kalen Black, even, probably not maybe any more Kobe Martin, but in spots if it's necessary, right? So let's not go away from what we've talked about just because it happened for 1 week. I don't think it stays that way.
It was just interesting to realize once they were playing, that top 5 team, great defense, how everything kind of shifted in Mendoza's decision making. And what was crazy about Mendoza last thing is after an interception this year, he's 2 for 2 on going on a game-winning touchdown drive. So, if you're a defense, you probably don't want to pick off Mendoza, right? Not really. You would want to get an interception, but let's segue a little bit. This is a dominant offensive team, and before we touch on the defense, Thomas, I know you took a deep dive into some specific plays from that Oregon game.
Yeah, talking about both the interceptions, Dante Moore's second, and obviously Fernando's pick 6, and then the play that you saw on the highlight read, Elijah Surratt. I break down how all those plays happen and all the important stuff you didn't see if it wasn't in slow-mo. Let's hit it. All right, guys, another film review here in the Crimson Kickoff studio. We're talking to Indiana and Oregon. 3 plays that were major factors in the game. The first of which you guys said was probably the loudest Autzen was all game. It's the Fernando Mendoza interception leading to a Brandon Finney pick 6. Now let's set it up. What's going to happen is E.J. Williams is coming across here. What Indiana's trying to do is they're just trying to extend this drive, right? They're up 7. There's 12 minutes to go. Trying to get more time off the clock, more plays with the ball in your hand. Oregon has different intentions. What they're going to do is they're going to bring Bear Alexander on a little trick here, make this guy coming at the left guard and the center are going to double team. Alexander's going to have a free shot at Mendoza. He's not going to realize till he's already on his back foot. He's going to try and loft the ball to Williams. It's never going to make it there. Let's see what Brandon Finney does with it. Yep, Alexander right in the face. Finney undercuts the route. I'll show you again, but E.J. Williams is actually somewhat open on that play. Nowakowski and Benson, good effort to try and stop him, but Finney gets into the end zone. So, as we go here, we can go ahead and go here, Emily. You see Bear Alexander come on this trap, double team there, right in his face. Now, look at Williams. Williams actually had some separation on that route, but since it was so underthrown, Finney was able to undercut it. If that ball is a little bit higher, a little more path to it, might have had a chance to complete that play and maybe even get more. Now, game's tied at 20. Let's see if Indiana, what they do on their next drive. They're going to try and get Elijah Surratt in the end zone here. So, the screenplay down here to Surratt. You're going to get these 4 linemen coming this way. How does a screenplay work, right? Well, first of all, get as many people away from the area as possible. So, take Hemby going left and bring this backer with him, and then you have a positive advantage with your blockers. And now, all Coach Shanahan can hope for is that they have enough speed to get out there, especially here on this safety. Let's see it. Surratt catches it. Look, 4 linemen. Great double team block. Great block down there by Omar Cooper. And Drew Evans was so close to getting there, right? He got a hand on him twice. Smart play not to hold. Now, let's show it again. First of all, see this linebacker go this way because of Hemby. That helps. Now, stop it here, Emily. You can see all these Oregon D linemen way behind the play, right? You have 1, 2, 3, 4 versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can Indiana get enough guys on bodies to get Surratt here? Now we can go. Great double team block, great block, great block. And look at Evans. He's so close. Gets a hand on him twice. Smart play, like I said, not to hold. Doesn't matter. Indiana punched it in shortly after. Now, let's go to the play that decided the game, right? 30-20 here. Dante Moore, his second interception. 2:06. You can throw this ball in bounds because of the 2-minute timeout, but you want a chunk play here. What he's seeing is 2 guys dropping the coverage. He has Sadiq coming this way. He thinks that Isaiah Jones is keying on Sadiq on this in route. So he looks left, comes back right, telegraphs the pass, Watch Isaiah Jones' eyes here, guys. Fisher drops. Jones, he's looking at more the entire time. There wasn't too much pressure really on that play, and so it wasn't like Moore had to rush it. So what happens? McClellan goes on the hitch. Sadiq comes. Watch Isaiah Jones' eyes. He's not worried about Sadiq. He knows he has over-the-top help, and then just keys on that ball. Even if he wasn't there, Pons was there too. That was the play that decided the game, right? Indiana goes up 10, or is up 10. There's no time left on the clock. Indiana ends up winning it on that play. Guys, back to the desk.
Some great analysis, Thomas. Did you change clothes?
I still have the same white shirt on.
Okay.
I was told by production I had to put a suit and a tie on.
Ah, well, you look great. Anyways, the IU defense has been tremendous all season long, and they carried that weight again against Oregon. They currently have one of the best front sevens in the entire nation, Thomas, and that was shown at Watson Stadium.
Yeah, I want to start with Aiden Fisher, right? Man, 13 tackles, tackle and a half for loss, a sack and a half. Played wonderful in zone coverage on defense. He was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week, and then he was also named the Walter Camp Player of the Week. He was unbelievable, and it makes other guys' jobs easier, right? Isaiah Jones had one of the best games of his season, the game-sealing interception. Why does that happen? Because Aiden Fisher is so dominant in the backfield and so dominant in zone defensive coverage, makes everyone's life so much easier.
Graham, Dante Moore's not a guy who gets sacked a lot, and Indiana got to him 6 times.
Yeah, 6 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. The defense was running all over the place. Since 2014, only 2 quarterbacks going into that week had been sacked 6+ times. It was Marcus Mariota in 2014, then ironically Dylan Gabriel in 2024, and now add Dante Moore to that list. He's only the 3rd Oregon QB since 2014 to be sacked 6+ times. It was a defensive dominance, and every front 7 Hoosier that played at least 1 snap had a tackle for loss.
Yeah. Isaiah Jones,
unreal.
Elijah Hardy had one. All the guys down there on the line, Kellen Wyatt, Tyreek Tucker got their hands in the mix. This team is unbelievable up front on the defensive side. They're 3rd in the entire country in total sacks with 22, 2nd in the nation for tackles for loss. I mean, we've talked about it so much. It is unbelievable that they just carry every single week. They continue to just punish teams in their own backfield, Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, what better way to put people, we talked about it last week, getting people behind the sticks? Well, it's pretty easy to make 2nd and 3rd down uncomfortable when you lead the nation in tackles for loss. Guys, it's unreal how quick these guys fly to the football. What's their saying? Fast, physical, relentless, right? Well, that's how this defensive front 7 is playing. They're playing what Bryant Haynes wants them to play, and it's making him a really strong contender for the Broyles Award, trying to win best coordinator in college football.
Let's talk about the linebackers a little bit, part of that mix. And this is a team, especially against Oregon, that was able to run a lot of 3 linebacker mixes because they were stuffing the run so much. It opened up those blitz packages that Bryant Haynes was using. And Isaiah Jones, this is a guy that came from the Tom Allen system, Graham, saw through, listened to Sig's mission, and he has flourished and come out in a big way his first season as a starter.
Yeah, he has. And you hear the guys in the locker room talk about him, and everyone is just so impressed with his work ethic, with his mentality, with how smart he is on the football field. He's just an intelligent player. Something that you were talking to us about before the show, Thomas, was a little shoulder hitch he showed right before that second interception that really opened things up. Little things like that right there. Got that pick because of a little shoulder hitch showing that he was going a different way, and he was able to go in front and get that football. He's a smart player, and to have a 3 linebacker combo mix that plays that well is just such a luxury for Indiana.
Bryant Haynes, the defensive coordinator and linebackers coach for Indiana, deemed Jones the nickname Isaiah Bones Jones. Bryant Haynes has a love for WWE. We got to talk to Isaiah Jones this week, and he kind of went through the background of getting this nickname. And it was actually when the coaching staff first got here. So before Jones was really implemented into the defense at the time, he got the nickname Bones Jones. I think it's sticking out this season. He leads the entire Big Ten in tackles for loss with 10 on the year, Thomas.
And I was just so amazed with Kurt Signetti's comments about Isaiah Jones this week. He said he's a great kid. He's gone through adversity, but he talked about how he changed his body, changed his regimen, got smarter on the football field. And Aiden Fisher talks about this a lot, how the longer you're in this system and the smarter you get while you understand the system, the faster you can play. The interception, the shoulder hitch I talked about, that's being in the system, realizing you have the over-the-top safety help, and all you got to do is look at the quarterback's eyes, especially when Moore had been pressured so much in that game. His eyes were going to wherever he was going to throw it, and Jones took over on that one.
You've brought his name up a lot, but the leader of this linebacking room, the leader of the defense, Aiden Fisher, was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week for his 13-tackle performance, 1.5 sacks on the day against Oregon. Graham, this guy rises to different levels. His stock is just shooting through the roof. And if there's anyone that is bought in to Signetti's mission, I don't think there's anyone more bought in than Aiden Fisher.
I totally agree. Again, talking to him after the game, he just raves about Kurt Signetti, the system coming over from JMU, the belief that not only he but the entire team has in the schemes in Kurt Signetti. What impresses me the most about this guy is he flies. He is truly one of the faster guys out there. This was one of the plays I was actually thinking of, catching up to a pretty quick guy in Dante Moore. He was still able to get there. He was flying around the field, in the backfield, in coverage. He's a great tool. He's got all the tools in the compartment that he can use. Can be anywhere on the field.
Just want to look into more some of the numbers. This is a team on the season that is 4th best in the country for scoring defense, allowing under 12 points per game. They held an Oregon rushing attack to 80 yards on times. This is 30 attempts. 2.5 yards per carry from an Oregon running game that had some guys, had some playmakers, and they just stuffed them in every way possible. And honestly, they made Dante Moore's life hell for that entire game.
Yeah, to me, it's two things. It's one, play recognition, and it's two, decisiveness, right? Doesn't matter if you're not if you know what is happening on the play and you're not decisive, but we saw on the screenplay just there, and then the sack on Moore. Fisher saw the play, recognized the play, and then went for broke. Said, I'm going to beat you to the spot, I'm going to get there, and I hope I'm not wrong. And so far this year, Aiden Fisher hadn't been wrong much.
Just to add one thing to their numbers-wise, Indiana's defense forced a loss of 73 yards. Nearly as many rushing yards as Oregon had over the course of the game. 8-yard difference. It was unbelievable.
It is. And in the second half, they held the Oregon offense to 45 total yards before Dante Moore's first interception. There were some garbage time yards there at the end on that last drive when Indiana led by 10 in the last 30 seconds. But they rose to the occasion. They found a way to win in a big time. And they only allowed 13 offensive points to a team that was top 10 in scoring heading into this game. That was just huge. And moving on to the secondary, a unit that won busted coverage kind of defined that game for a moment, but having D'Angelo Pons back, Graham, was huge. We talked about it a little bit at the top of the show, but he opens up so much more for this IU defense.
He does, and what I think he really opens up is those linebackers to do their thing, right? We'd see a lot less zone coverage. D'Angelo Pons can work, and he really did. He was targeted a team-high 6 times, only allowed 2 catches, and it was 14 yards. So he went to work. He's been graded as the best coverage cornerback in the Big Ten via PFF. I don't think there's much more to say other than look at the numbers, look at the awards.
And moving to the back guy at the safety position, the plaintiff, Lewis Moore. Thomas, you've detailed a lot about what happened with his court case, but he's playing some phenomenal ball, and with everything he's had to deal with, some top-level football from Lewis Moore.
Well, I mean, I think he's playing on house money a little bit right now. Is done with the court case, doesn't have to worry about it anymore. And now you can see he's playing free. And how about the guy just going up and getting a rebound on that play? The one thing you kind of worry about, right, when that ball on the first interception gets tipped up in the air is, oh, please don't hit each other. Don't have someone tip it out of someone else's hands. Well, decisiveness and play recognition, right? If you see the ball, just go get it and scream, get out of my way. Go up, grab the rebound, and that's exactly what Lewis Moore did on this play right here.
You just see it tipped up right there. And Lewis Moore, he sees Aiden Fisher barreling at him, and that's a 6'2", 235-pound guy, full speed. No
I would really want to run into Fisher either,
I mean, Lewis Moore took it like a champ, though, so good for him.
And how about the tip from Daly?
Oh,
from Stephen Daly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just goes
Getting
to
his
show
hands up quick.
more versatility and depth of that front unit right there. And a guy we haven't talked about all season long is Mikhail Kamara. Graham, I know you have some stats courtesy of your guy, Bite Size Bison.
Yes, Taylor Lehman, shout out Bite Size Bison. It's phenomenal. Yeah, we've talked a lot about Kamara. He hasn't had the start that many people expected, especially in that sack category, right? He hasn't put up nearly as many as we would have thought, but he's still one of the best run pass rushers in the Big Ten. He's tied for third among Big Ten defensive ends in pressures against Oregon, and currently tied for fourth among Big Ten DEs in QB pressures in 2025. So he's still making an impact. He's just not getting home. He's not getting that big hit play, but the presence that they've got to account for Mikhail Kamara coming off the edge is monumental. It's huge. You got to account for it. And then also, he's still getting in there and pressuring the quarterback every week.
Guys, the quarterbacks that Indiana has played so far this year, Colton Joseph, Mark Gronowski, Dante Moore, Luke Altmaier, that is a collection of very high-level quarterbacks, guys who are multi-year guys who have been with these programs and really played really good football. Well, through 6 weeks, those quarterbacks are throwing 69% completion percentage, 840 yards, which is about 140 a game, 2 touchdowns, 9 interceptions against the Hoosiers. The 2 passing touchdowns, blown coverage, one against Illinois and one against Oregon.
And it just seems like even every completion is kind of a dink and dunk outside of, the Altmaier over the top and then Dante Moore. They're not allowing many, the 15 to 20 range, the medium to deep range passes. This defense has played very strong up to this point. Before we segue on, because we do have a homecoming game to preview, let's crown some offensive and defensive players of the week. Graham, I'm going to give you the reins on the offensive. I know we talked about it a ton, so it might be a little obvious.
Yeah, it's hard not to give it to Elijah Surratt, right? Especially considering the game-winning touchdown, 8 receptions, 121 yards, the 1 touchdown. This guy was a machine, showing up in the big moments, showing up in the big game on the road against a number 3 opponent at Autzen Stadium. Doesn't get much better than that.
It would be a disservice not to mention the guy who scored his first ever touchdowns repping the cream and crimson, Roman Hemby, punching in 2 very important touchdowns, both schemed well. And then, we mentioned how well he just puts his heads down and fights for extra yards. Defensive player of the game, Thomas. Who is it?
Yeah, well, we'll call it defensive performer of the game this week, guys. We're going with Bryant Haynes. Bryant Haynes put up some incredible schemes on the defensive side. Really good use of the linebackers, the 3 linebacker sets like you guys talked about. The defense themselves only allowed 13 points in Autzen Stadium to the Oregon Ducks. They made Dante Moore's life not easy, right? 6 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. The reason we're picking Haynes is because the defense played so well. You can't just choose one guy, right? I mean, the Big Ten chose Aiden Fisher. We probably shouldn't have disagreed with that maybe, but Bryant Haynes is getting the defensive performer of the week on Crimson Kickoff.
Well, something about last week was Isaiah Jones, Elijah Hardy, Aiden Fisher were all top 5 graded linebackers according to PFF. That is unbelievable that 3 linebackers were in the top 5 from just one team. But we got to move on. It's been a crazy first half of the season across the country in college football, but also in the Big Ten. Our very own Brooks White has his Big Ten breakdown before we get into everything Michigan State. Don't go anywhere.
It's time again for Brooks's Big Ten breakdown, and we start with a meltdown in Happy Valley. Penn State has lost 3 straight, capped off by a 22-21 collapse to Northwestern, and that was the final straw. The Fire Franklin chants turned real. James Franklin is out after 12 seasons. Penn State's now 3-3 with Terry Smith taking over as interim. And it doesn't get any easier for the Nittany Lions as they head to Iowa City for a night game against the Hawkeyes. Number 1, Ohio State stays perfect after beating number 17, Illinois, 34-16 in Champaign. Julian Sayin threw 2 touchdowns as C.J. Donaldson ran for 2 more, and the Buckeyes defense forced 3 turnovers, all turned into points. Ryan Day said, "We haven't accomplished anything yet, but this team looks every bit like the one to beat." And now they head to Madison for a primetime trip to Wisconsin, and that crowd better bring its best. Out west, USC bounced back in a big way, a 31-13 win over number 15 Michigan. Walk-on running back King Miller ran wild for 158 yards and a touchdown, while Jaden Maeva threw for 265 and 2 more. The Trojans played tough, Big Ten-style football, and the defense forced 2 red zone turnovers. USC moves to 5-1 and heads to South Bend next week to face Notre Dame, where Michigan is back home trying to regroup against a scrappy Washington team. Penn State's unraveling, Ohio State's rolling, USC's rising, and the Big Ten just keeps on getting better. That's your Big Ten breakdown. I'm Brooks White. We'll see you next week.
Well, the Big Ten never fails to have drama and crazy storylines. And yes, Indiana had a historic win out in Eugene, but I'd say the biggest storyline of this past weekend in the Big Ten, James Franklin is out as the head coach of Penn State after 3 consecutive losses, an absolute collapse after that Oregon game. And in comes Terry Jones to fill in as the interim for the rest of the season. Thomas, as far as timing is concerned, Franklin's fired, Cignetti signs the extension. It's kind of do or die. There's a big sense of urgency for Penn State to find that replacement.
Joe, it's so unbelievable to me, right? 19 days ago, a lead in overtime against Oregon. Chance to go win that game would have been probably the biggest win in James Franklin's career, at least at this kind of magnitude where his job might have been on the line. And then he goes, greets his family, tells them to walk ahead. He goes through the tunnel, just getting ripped in that game against Northwestern. And then the contingency plan was put in place. He was fired. Just
wild things happening throughout the Big Ten. Or this second firing this season in the Big Ten. Maybe they'll have a little bit of the UCLA bump that they've been going on. Tim Skipper's doing a great job out in Pasadena right now. But last thing about Big Ten, Graham, is there a real possibility that the Big Ten championship features 2 undefeated teams? Because right now, Ohio State, Indiana, they're 6-0.
I think there's a really, really good chance. You look at the remaining schedules, Indiana is favored in every game that it has left to play. Ohio State absolutely is favored in every single game that it has left to play. So if you crunch numbers, it will tell you yes.
The accountants.
The accountant over here. Now, realistically, that would be unbelievable, right? That would be so hard to do. But all things considered, and the games that Indiana has left, I think that we will have 2 12-0s in Indianapolis.
It's going to be wild.
Guys, one stat I want to talk about before we get out of the Big Ten conversation is how much a firing like James Franklin changes the landscape of college football for everyone, right? When Nick Saban retired, 423 jobs changed just from one man at the top of the echelon getting out of there. Over 100 colleges had position switched, 12 high schools and 10 NFL teams. Guys, I was looking at this graphic earlier. Somehow 3 media members went into coaching positions. I don't know how exactly that happened, but what is important here is James Franklin, his exiting at Penn State, it's going to cause a ripple effect like probably the biggest since Saban's retired.
So you're saying there's a chance one of us could be a coach here soon? Media members into coaching, is that the pipeline these days? Maybe. I'm not sure.
Ivy Tech, maybe.
We're going to wrap our full-scale Big Ten talk. We got to move on, though. The Michigan State Spartans are playing here at Merchants Bank Field at Memorial Stadium. 3:30 kickoff on Saturday. It's homecoming for Indiana. And our very own Oliver Carr previews the Michigan State Spartans throughout this season.
Following their massive road win in Eugene, Oregon, the Indiana Hoosiers and their alumni return home to Memorial Stadium. In what will almost certainly be a homecoming party atmosphere, the Michigan State Spartans will try to cancel the festivities. Led by junior quarterback Aiden Childs, the Michigan State offense will try to rebound following a lackluster offensive performance at home against UCLA. In years past, Sparty relied on its running game, but this year, more responsibility has been placed on Childs, whose dual-threat capabilities help to support their dynamic passing game. Childs and the Spartans had success through the air on the road against USC, with Childs tossing 3 scores, but he struggled against Nebraska and UCLA, combining for a total of 151 yards through the air across those 2 games. The leading pass catcher for the Spartans is sophomore standout Nick Marsh, who last year set the receptions and reception yards freshman records for Michigan State. Michigan State has struggled to find some balance on offense this season, as their running game averages under 100 yards per game in Big Ten play. So, a key for the Spartans in this game will be to try to utilize sophomore running back Mekhi Frazier. So while at times the Michigan State offense has looked dynamic and impressive, the Spartans' Achilles heel is their defense. The Spartan defense has yet to hold any of their Big Ten opponents to under 38 points. Their major concern has been the rushing defense, as they gave up an average of 210 yards on the ground during Big Ten play. So for the Spartans to have success against the third-ranked Indiana Hoosiers, they will need to emphasize time of possession and avoid turnovers to keep their defense off the field. And for the Hoosiers, it'll be all about keeping their focus and the party atmosphere engaged by creating havoc in the backfield and big plays on offense. For Crimson Kickoff, I'm Oliver Carr.
The Michigan State Spartans, like Indiana, are coached by a second-year guy, Jonathan Smith, at the helm of Spartyland. A much different story, though. They're 3-3 on the season, a 3-game losing streak, all in Big Ten play. Started the season 3-0 in their non-conference slate, and the wheels are falling off this wagon in year 2 of Smith's tenure. Some of the noise in East Lansing is they're calling for Smith's head to be fired, maybe the next Big Ten guy to be out of a job. Obviously, it's very early. They're 3-3, a lot left in this season, and that's a tough shoes to fill in that Michigan State job. But this team is struggling right now. They're coming off just a collapse on their own homecoming, a 38-13 loss against UCLA, Graham.
Yeah, it was tough, and it's been really tough across Big Ten games. I mean, Michigan State has allowed about 32 points per game against all of their opponents, 38 plus against all 3 Big Ten teams. So it's really been all over the place for that defense. There are some bright spots for the offense, but it's been, since the start of Big Ten play, it's really been a struggle for the team as a whole, especially that defense.
Now, Thomas, those first 2 Big Ten games that Michigan State played, it wasn't necessarily close, but they were in the game at USC. They were in the game at Nebraska. There were obviously some problems, but they were scoring points, and their defense was kind of like lagging behind a little bit. That UCLA game, that was, a downfall. Yes, Aiden Childs did get hurt in that second half, but you can't just blame it on injury.
Yeah, for me right now, it's just Aiden Childs just having to do too much. I think that could have led to his injury, right? He is doing it all in the passing game. He's doing a pretty good portion of the work, 58 carries in the run game. And like you said, Graham, 5 straight games of 38-plus points given up. His defense is just letting him down. And in the Big Ten, that will not work.
Alicio Milivojevic had to fill in the second half against UCLA. The redshirt freshman out of Illinois, he's only thrown 26 passes on the season, was 8 for 18 against the Bruins. Aiden Childs is likely to play, according to Jonathan Smith. He was very optimistic that Childs would be back against Indiana. And, I mean, if this Spartans team wants any chance, I mean, it's a high spread, then we'll touch on it. But if Michigan State wants a chance to win, Aiden Childs needs to be playing.
That's absolutely right. He's one of the best quarterbacks, actually, in college football when scrambling. That's a very interesting thing to watch out for, and he's got that dual threat option, something that we saw Indiana struggle with early in the season against Colton Joseph. Even Gronowski had a little bit of a success in Iowa, so absolutely need to have that piece in Aiden Childs if Michigan State wants a chance here in Bloomington.
Graham, you weren't with us, but Joe, last year we saw Aiden Childs when he's out of the pocket. He's unreal. It is impressive to watch. And let's not forget, guys, that last year, Indiana on this huge, fairy tale opening to the season, right? They go, and their first deficit of the season was 10-0 at Michigan State. Now,
yes.
What happened, Joe?
It was interesting. Chris Signetti went to the post-game press conference on his podium, and the first thing he says is, well, now you know what happens when we trail. The final score was 47-10 in favor of Indiana. But to Aiden Childs' credit, that first touchdown he had against the Hoosiers last season, he had to roll right, just chucked it in a perfect spot, back right corner of the end zone.
That was an all-world throw.
That was a great play. I remember we were down there. I was like, whoa.
Yeah,
whoa.
That was probably a 40-yard just dot pass. Perfectly inbounds. That was an NFL throw.
He has the raw talent, the escapability. It just seems like the offensive line hasn't really picked up the slack. He has been sacked a lot, and that's a big thing to note. We talk so much about that front seven, Graham. Can this Spartans offensive line hold up with, these blitz packages and everything happen? on the Hoosiers defensive side.
I don't think so. I think it's going to be a really tough day for that offensive line. Michigan State has allowed 15 sacks, which ranks 107th nationally. They've really, really struggled. And that's the big thing is Childs has been forced to create a little too much. He's great when he scrambles. He can make really good throws, but that offensive line just hasn't allowed him to settle into the game enough. I think it's going to be similar struggles. A couple of guys on that offensive line have had a poor season so far, and this is a really hard environment to try to change that on the road, homecoming against the number 3 team in the land.
You hit right where I was going, Graham. 1, homecoming, and 2, because this is the most excitement Indiana football has ever had. Like I said earlier, 3 first-place votes. Guys, there are people coming from all over the country back to their alma mater, back to see football like any alumni within the past 2 years and beyond has never seen, right? So these people are coming to see the number 3 ranked Hoosiers. It is going to be sold out, and it is going to be loud.
By the time Saturday hits, it will be 28 days since Indiana played at Merchants Bank Field here at Memorial Stadium. That was against Illinois because of the road game at Iowa, the bye week, and then, of course, the game in Eugene. This place is going to be rocking. The fans are eager to watch this Indiana team play again. Ticket prices are over $160 for Indiana and Michigan State. But these are 2 teams, Graham, that have a lot of history against each other. It's the 72nd all-time meeting between the Hoosiers and the Spartans. And like a lot of these rivalries that Indiana has, it is heavily tilted in Michigan State's favor.
Yeah, it has been, but not so much.
It's a different era.
It's a different era. It's a different time period. Indiana's favored by 27.5 points, which since 2013, the highest that either team has been favored in the series. If you go back to 2013, that was the highest previously. It was 16.5, which was in favor of Michigan State. Over 10 points more. You mentioned it. This series has been very heavily favored towards Michigan State. But Curt Cignetti's in town, and he has totally changed the vibe, not just of Indiana football, but of Big Ten football in general.
I mean, that's been the notion around Cignetti taking over this program. And I mean, it was a dying flame at that. There was hardly a flame. There was ashes and ambers, and he erupted it into, the emerging superpower or a powerhouse program, a team that goes to Eugene and takes down Oregon. This is an interesting one. The Old Brass Spittoon, it is a trophy game. A lot of history with the trophy as well. It's been 75 years of the Old Brass Spittoon being a trophy. 1950 was the first ever game. It's the 68th, or this will be the 69th game of the Old Brass Spittoon game. A lot of fun. I imagine, this place is going to be rocking, 56,000 strong. So let's move on to the final segment of our show. Thomas, because of your glamorous and all your great selection last week, you get the first dibs on the pick.
That's all? No more?
Oh, wow, Thomas got it right.
No, I'm kidding. I think Indiana, what they need to do is avoid coming out and kind of having a little bit of a hangover game, right? You traveled. You just had the biggest win. You had a lot of media stuff you had to do this week. You have to get the crowd into the game early, go score on your first possession or get a stop on Michigan State's first possession, and I think it'll be pretty much smooth sailing. I have Indiana winning this 45-3, retaining the spittoon and covering that 27.5 historic spread.
I think this team is eager to be back at home. I think the offense, maybe that first drive is a little bit shaky, but this defense looks so sharp. It doesn't look like there are many holes in this defense outside of a couple busted coverages throughout the first 6 games. I think Indiana takes care of business and pretty much dominates from kickoff to the final whistle when quad zeros hit the scoreboard. Indiana wins 56-7 and comfortably covers that 27.5 spread.
Guys, you know what they say. Good teams win, great teams cover. And Indiana has proven to be a pretty great team. I also have them covering. I think that it's going to be a pretty convincing Indiana win. I have it at 52-10 IU. I will say I think that Michigan State, my bold claim for this game is that Michigan State, like you said for the season opener, is going to score first. And I say that because a little bit of a hangover game coming off that big win, a lot of travel, but also Michigan State is actually a very explosive team, and that kind of gets overlooked because of all the struggles. I mean, Aiden Childs ranks second in the conference in average depth of target. He just launches that thing, and he can have a lot of success doing it. Also, he's a dual threat guy, which, as we talked about, is something that Indiana's defense has struggled a bit with. So I think early on, there might be a bit more struggles with that. We've also seen a couple blown coverages, Illinois and Oregon, where those two teams scored. Michigan State has the ability to do the same thing. I think there's potential they do it first, but after that, I think it's a blowout.
I don't mind that take because you go back to week 2 when it was Kennesaw State in town, and it was explosive plays by Amari Odom that kind of carried their whole offense. Yes, that was a blowout. But, you know, kind of similar as where you have this team that has the ability to have some big-time plays. We'll see if that comes to fruition, however. Big game for Indiana. It's the next game. It's their 7th game of the season. It's homecoming, a 3:30 kickoff on Peacock, which ironically is the same exact time and broadcast that was last season's game against Michigan State. Old Brass Spittoon is on the line. But for Graham Nash, Thomas Crow, our entire production crew, I'm Joe Cronin saying so long from Merchants Bank Field here at Memorial Stadium. We'll catch you next time on Crimson Kickoff.
Cooper got open and caught it. Touchdown, Indiana. Going up the middle is Omar Cooper, and he'll walk into the end zone. Pump fake. Complete at the 47. Surratt with no one to beat.